Good afternoon to you and welcome to CoreTV News at 4. I am Olajimoke Olatuju. A civil society organization, Social Action, has raised alarm over Nigeria's public debt, which it says has risen to 12.12 trillion naira as of June 30, 2015. National coordinator of the group, Vivian Belawo, reviewed this at a forum in Abuja. However, noted the increased rate of borrowing among governments at all levels has not significantly impacted infrastructure development in the country. She also claimed the money from loans have been stolen or mismanaged in the same way the oil revenues have been misappropriated by government officials.
We have a situation whereby our collective resources are being channeled out to agents, to foreign governments and foreign bodies and foreign agents to the detriment of we Nigerians. And so we want to take back our resources, monies that have been being used as to service debt servicing, loan servicing. These monies have compromised our development. These monies have compromised our lives as Nigerians. These monies have compromised our health. As I speak to you today, over 30% of the budget is being used to service debt. And this is, you can agree with me that this is a terrible situation.
Getting it right means sticking to the provisions of the law. And the Fiscal Responsibility Act is clear. It says you can only borrow for human for human development or for capital projects. You cannot borrow for recurrent expenditure to pay salaries and overheads. You need to do a cost-benefit analysis, borrow in a sustainable manner, make sure you take loans that have long amortization period, and they should be on concessional terms. Once you get this right, and of course you need to have legislative approval, and borrow for projects that can generate economic growth, to regenerate the economy so that in future you are able to pay, even if it is to train the manpower, the human beings in society that will help us grow.
The Nigerian police has once again emphasized that roadblocks are banned in the country and that Nigerians should report any form of extortion from corrupt police personnel, while also emphasizing the bill is free in all of its stations across the country. CSP Abayomi Shongole, officer in charge of the newly introduced Complaints Response Unit of the police, says it's a new dawn under the leadership of IGP Solomon Arase. He made the submissions on Monday when he featured as a guest in our flagship news and current affairs program, Core Digest.
Yes, roadblocks are banned. The ban on roadblocks are still in force. But what we are now encouraging is stop and search points, and visibility policing. And you are going to see police officers flagging a vehicle down to carry out a search on the vehicle or on the persons in the vehicle. Those are allowed, and those are the only things they are going to be doing. The moment it turns to requesting for money, then that is outside the responsibility. You know, in the past, yes, we had it clearly written in police stations, bail is free. But if something to the contrary happens, who will you report to? Probably nobody. But the game changer here, and the difference is this CRU and the information the different platform provided. So I think I will encourage members of the public to lay their complaints, and we'll definitely look into it. These are the numbers, and we have 0805 700 001 and 0805 700 002. Those two numbers are strictly for phone calls. We are not going to take text messages on those ones. Then the one for text messaging and WhatsApp is 0805 700 0003. Then we also have a Twitter handle, which is at policeng_CRU. Then there's also a Facebook page, which is www.facebook.com/npfcomplaint. facebook.com/npfcomplaint.
The Peace and Reconciliatory Committee in the Plateau State House of Assembly has blamed stakeholders and those it described as war merchants in the state for the prolonged communal crisis that the state has suffered for over 14 years. Our Plateau State correspondent has the details. The Ad hoc Peace and Reconciliation Committee that was set up over 5 months ago to look into the communal crisis which has given Plateau State an unpleasant and undesirable image in the nation for over 14 years, alleges an undertone influence from their community leaders.
Unwillingness of parties to commit to peace path. The Bureau, House of Fulani and other tribal leaders who are representative in the peace process in Plateau State are not willing to resolve their differences. That there is a complete absence of commitment on the part of the traditional rulers, the Arabs, and on the part of the Christian, Muslim, political and youth leaders to end the crisis. Which means, to say political, it means including you and I, Mr. Speaker. That animosity and profit, there are profit derivable by some of them, be it traditional rulers, Arabs, religious leaders. Some people are conflict interferers within and outside the affected local government areas. This is largely responsible for the breaking down of peace pact.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has affirmed the readiness of the federal government at building on the successes of the 2015 electoral process. Osinbajo, who stated this at the opening of the E-Conference 2015, says the current administration is keen to engage all stakeholders to ensure the deployment of technology for the 2019 general election. Our correspondent Abiola Oluwole completes the story.
The E-Nigeria Conference is designed to explore ways of maximizing the potentials of the country in the area of information technology. Experts, electoral officers, politicians are here to brainstorm on how best to fight electoral fraud through the use of technology.
The recommendations that will come out of these deliberations will greatly contribute to the consolidation of our electoral processes and systems in Nigeria.
Vice President Osinbajo, who was represented by Deputy Chief of Staff to the President, Adebaye, maintains that the federal government is ready to deploy ICT to further guarantee effective service delivery to Nigerians. He also affirmed the stance of the current administration at building on the successes of the 2015 general elections by deploying technology for the 2019 electoral process.
To further build on the achievements of the 2015 elections, we will engage all relevant stakeholders, as we are doing today, through dialogue, research on best practices across the globe, and conferences such as E-Nigeria to provide useful insights and information that can deepen understanding and engender the deployment of even more advanced technologies to improve our electoral process.
For his part, the immediate past chairman of INEC, Atahiru Jega, is convinced that the 2019 elections will be a consolidation of the current electoral process. He however noted that emphasis must be placed on restructuring the existing legal framework for election, adoption of technology, and financial autonomy for INEC, a position seconded by his predecessor, Mahmoud Yakubu.
Electoral processes cannot be effective if an election management body is starved of funds and/or has to go cap in hand to an incumbent executive begging for funds before it can conduct an election. As we begin a new electoral cycle, the Commission and staff are eager and enthusiastic about gathering information and knowledge that can help in the deployment of new and sustainable technologies in order to improve our electoral process.
And even though the next general elections are still far away, political watchers are keeping an eagle eye on what will be the performance of INEC in the coming governorship elections in Kogi and Bayelsa states. Abiola Oluwole, CoreTV News, Abuja.
Media aides of the Deputy President of the Senate, Ikwe Kweramadu, claimed that he escaped a suspected assassination attempt on Tuesday. The attempt, according to a statement signed by his spokesman, Uche Anichuko, occurred at about 10 a.m. between Flyover and Dancer Construction Company's yard, close to the old Central Bank headquarters junction, on his way to work. He noted that the suspected assassins were operated in a tinted, white-colored Mercedes-Benz AMG E63 without a plate number, were taken by a long-bearded light-skinned foreigner whom it described as a possible mercenary. The statements indicated that the vehicle, which was positioned by the APO bridge on noticing that the Deputy President of the Senate's convoy took the right turn to join the Nnamdi Azikiwe Expressway, instead make a turn. The Senate has vowed to resist all attempts to blackmail it over plans to probe the alleged 25 billion naira payment to an e-payment collection agency involved in remittance to the Treasury single account. Senate President Bukola Saraki said this after the senator representing Kogi West, Dino Malai, had raised the point of order in a publication in This Day newspaper, which he described as uncharitable to the Senate. Malai noted that the authors of the write-up had accused the Senate of working against the interest of President Muhammadu Buhari by seeking to probe the matter.
Or blackmailed by journalists, group of persons or individuals who have commercialized their consciences and then casting aspersion on the constitutional responsibility of the Senate, which is to carry out oversight functions over the MDAs. May that day never come that the Senate will see an anomaly or abuse of public funds and keep quiet because we are going to be blackmailed. The insinuation in this write-up, Mr. President, is that we are fighting and attacking Mr. President. Mr. President is not the one collecting 1% of TSA. And the motion moved last week, Wednesday, Mr. President, had two prayers. The first prayer was to thank Mr. President and commend Mr. President for the implementation of TSA. And we encourage using TSA in compliance with Section 80 to turn around and make it look as if the Senate is fighting Mr. President, is myopic, is parochial, is unacceptable to the Senate and senators of the 8th Assembly.
Chairman, sir, we'll refer the letter to you for you to review and come back to us within a week.
Still on the Senate, the upper chamber of the National Assembly has directed the Joint Admission and Matriculation Board to review the period of validity of its results to 3 years. The resolution is a fallout of a motion raised by the senator representing Gombe South, Joshua Lidani, on the new admission policy of the tertiary examination body. Those in support of the motion argued the extension will reduce pressure on parents, as well as JAMB, which has been saddled with the responsibility of conducting entry-level examinations for all tertiary institutions. The motion was later referred to the Senate Committee on Education. Those implicated by the investigative panel on arms procurement have been ordered arrested by President Muhammadu Buhari. The presidency says this last night. The interim report chronicles alleged massive mismanagement, misappropriation, and outright theft of public funds in billions of naira and in foreign currencies. Presidential spokesman Femi Adesina says in a statement that the president issued the executive order for the arrest after receiving the preliminary report of the probes of arms procurement between 2007 and 2015 by the committee raised on August 31st by the National Security Advisor Babagana Munguna. President Muhammadu Buhari has directed that the relevant organizations arrest and bring to book all individuals who have been found complicit in this illegal and fraudulent acts. The 8th Senate has approved and adopted a legislative agenda to guide its activities and procedures for the next 4 years. The guidelines were adopted after a lengthy deliberation on the floor of the Senate on Tuesday. Members expressed hope that an ad hoc committee will be set up to ensure compliance with the provisions of the agenda. Senate spokesman Ali Sabi shed more light on the legislative agenda at a news conference after plenary.
In plenary today, approved and adopted the report of the ad hoc committee on the legislative agenda and formally bringing to conclusion the production of that particular document. And with me here is a copy of that particular document. It has been approved, and henceforth, this 8th Senate will be guided by the content of this particular document. Mark the word, guided, because we are not going to be a rigid body. We are going to be a dynamic, flexible, responsive, but result-oriented, in the sense that whatever we have said here will be subject to the vagaries of our environmental dynamism, because the environment is dynamic. What we thought is correct today might shift ground based on new realities tomorrow. So we are going to be guided by this document in our actions, and in the coming days, weeks, bearing any issue, we should be able to formally have this document produced so that it will be formally circulated to all Nigerians to know. And for the Senate, we will ensure that it becomes a companion to our legislative actions.
The House of Representatives is to investigate the activities of pay television operators in the country. This was on the basis of a motion by Edward Kwajuk, who expressed disappointment that the foreign operators demand millions of naira to put local stations on their platforms. The lawmakers also deliberated on the need to review the digitization program in the Nigerian broadcast industry. Also considered was a motion on the need to curb the unwholesome practices of banks in Nigeria. National Assembly correspondent Jamila Fagwa reports.
Nigeria commenced the digitization program in December of 2007, following a directive by late President Umar Musa Yar'Adua, International Broadcasting Commission, to that effect. Despite the directive, industry leaders agreed to a shift from the initial international deadline, and switching from analog to digital view was an issue that is not going down well with some members.
The country has not been able to meet the requirements for the deadline of 2015, thus necessitating a new deadline of July 17, 2017 for digital switchover, which is meant to phase out the use of analog television sets, which would entail the use of pay TV channels, whereby viewers pay for TV viewing by subscribing on periodic basis. Also note that the platforms for the pay TV programs are dominated by foreigners like the DSTV owned by MultiChoice, a South African company, and StarTimes, 70% owned by Chinese and 30% by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
One point in focus during the deliberation was the fact that foreign pay-per-view operators were dominating the Nigerian scene, and some existing stations were having to pay millions to provide content on their platforms.
The other aspect of the motion that I want to underscore its relevance is the one that talks about investigating StarTimes and NTA partnership, particularly the revenues generated, and to report back to the House. I am privileged to information that even the partnership of StarTimes and NTA that is providing the platform for some budding Nigerian investors to hook onto this platform to broadcast their programs. It's actually very, very unfriendly to the Nigerian investor. There are a lot of television stations. Why DSTV that we castigate for charging us excessively is not charging Nigerian stations? If you have content that is suitable and desirable, there are no charges. The Nigerian stations on start times that is partly our own are forced to pay between 40 to 45 million annually that they are not even able to generate sometimes from their revenue generation.
The matter was thereafter referred to the Committee on Communications. Midway into the deliberations, House Leader Femi Gbajabiamila took to the floor to appeal to members to join President Muhammadu Buhari in supporting the Armed Forces Remembrance Day emblem by contributing some amount of money.
Joining hands with the President and the Commander-in-Chief, who launched the emblem with 10 million naira on behalf of the federal government, that this House also supports by donating 10,000 naira each from every member and support with 3.6 million naira and a gap, and perhaps Mr. Speaker and the leadership will bridge that gap and make it a round figure of 5 million in support of our heroes past.
The motion on the need to curb unwholesome practices by banks where young boys and girls in marketing departments are made to bring in fat accounts from clients with stringent conditions was also raised by Representative Segun Adekola.
The House notes, the House aware of the practice of some banks giving their employees targets to bring in deposits ranging from hundreds of millions to billions of naira within a time frame, ranging from 1 to 6 months, as the case may be, failing which various forms of threat, intimidation, or harassment are made to the employee, including issuance of queries, demotions, and ultimately summary dismissals. The House notes that a critical assessment of the target being given to these employees to meet show them to be unrealistic, unreasonable, ordinarily unattainable.
Meanwhile, 10 bills which have passed the first reading were presented before the House, while 4 motions were referred to the relevant committees for further legislative action. Jamil Afegwa, CoreTV News, Abuja.
This is still CoreTV News at 4. We'll take a break now, but back on our stories. Please do this again.
The man on the streets have come to realize that the power to make decisions lies in the hands of the people.
I don't think the election.
First local government out of the 30 local government is more than many states in the north.
The economy is booming. Where is the economy booming?
Blast in Abuja.
Don't you have security?
Why are we fighting? The president should not just sit in Abuja or in Asokoro or wherever he lives. Those are supposed to be local. They know they cannot be there and be here at the same time.
The life of the citizens, community need to be protected.
It's can't work out.
Bring the message of peace. Let there be proper devolution of power from the center. The center is too powerful.
It's time to do the best. But people are hasty. Why are you hasting? Why are you hasting? Why are you hasting? Why let's
The people giving voice to the voiceless.
Thank you for joining us again. For more news and other programs, please visit our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/CoreTV News. You can follow us on Twitter at CoreTV News NG. Also visit our YouTube channel at youtube.com/CoreTV, leave a space, the news. The Senate Committee on Ethics, Privileges and Public Petitions has issued a final invitation for former chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Ibrahim Lamade, to appear before it on Tuesday, November 24. This was after he failed to show up as expected before a panel investigating alleged diversion of assets and properties during his tenure as the FCC chairman. Committee Chairman Sam Ayawo said that new data after a failed attempt by Lamade's lawyer, Festus Keyamo, to buy more time for the former EFCC chairman, who he claimed had traveled out of the country for medical reasons. National Assembly correspondent Pasia report.
This is not the first time Lamade will be disregarding an invitation to appear before the Senate Committee on Ethics, Privileges and Public Petitions. He has been invited at least twice since a petition against him was tabled before the Senate in August, but the former anti-graft boss has failed to show at every time. His lawyer, Festus Keyamo, was there in his stead, a situation the committee described as a disappointment and an affront to the Senate.
Chief Lamode is invited to this committee. This petition is against him as a person.
Then the Senate does not have powers over private persons.
No. invite a former governor who is no longer a governor of a state. So that is point. And we are not doing logic here. That that even in the course of investigation, anybody ordinarily can be invited to the state.
Section 89 of the Constitution is very, very clear. It says for the purpose of any investigation under Section 88 of this Constitution and subject to the provision thereof, the Senate or the House of Representatives or a committee appointed in accordance with Section 65 of this Constitution shall have powers to A. To procure all evidence, written or oral, direct or circumstantial, as it may think necessary or desirable, and to examine all persons and witnesses whose evidence may be material or relevant to the subject matter.
When his lawyer was given an opportunity to speak, he explained that Lamode's absence was because he traveled out for treatment. This, Keyamo explained, is because his client had assumed that he was off the hook with a new man in charge of the anti-graft agency. His excuse is, however, not acceptable to the committee.
It was in his absence, sir, that the second letter came, this last letter came, and the distinguished members of this committee and the distinguished chairman, if you look at it, it was addressed immediate past chairman of EFCC. So the committee is aware that he's no longer chairman of EFCC. As a result, the factual situation was that he completely was thought that in that capacity he could no longer sit down here again to give evidence for this committee. That's one. Secondly, and most importantly, that is the legal point now. The fact that he's no longer chairman of EFCC, sir, can this committee or can the Senate at all still exercise jurisdiction over him as a person under investigation, not as a witness?
He has an invitation, and for almost 3 months he has been dodging appearance for this invitation. I think you should please advise him properly, because it is not good. If today now a warrant is issued, they will say that because he had an issue with the Senate or the leadership of the Senate, that is why he is being persecuted. We don't want to persecute anybody.
And seeing that the senators were not ready to budge, Keyamo insists that the committee and the Senate lack the power to invite Lamode to appear before it.
If you look at Section 88, I guess 88 or 89, it says that those who are charged or intended to be charged with the responsibility of an office. So it does not talk about those who were charged or who was charged or the person who was charged with a responsibility.
The committee dismissed his position and fixed Tuesday, November 24 as the final date of appearance for the former anti-graft boss. Basia Ye, CoreTV News, Abuja.
The Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps has deployed 5,000 personnel, sniffers, dogs, and other security machinery for the November 21 governorship election in Kogi State. Now, this, according to the NSCDC Commandant General Abdullahi Muhammad, is because a robust security architecture is necessary to guarantee security during the electoral process. Spokesman for the Corps, Emmanuel Oke, says in a statement that the Commandant General expressed confidence that all the security agencies would have a seamless operation during the Kogi State elections. He also warned potential troublemakers that they would be dealt with, while urging parents to caution their wards against thuggery and all forms of electoral violence. Meanwhile, the Ebonyi State Command of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps on Wednesday arrested 2 persons suspected to be pipeline vandals in the state. The 2 suspects were arrested between 2 a.m. and 6:30 a.m. in Iwo local government area of the state. According to the State Commandant of the Corps, Shoaib Jibril, the suspects are Ifeanyi Chukwu and Udkem Indika, who hailed from Amoyo village in the Shago community of Iwo local government area of the state. They said the suspects will be charged to court as soon as the command concludes its investigation on the matter. He cautioned youths in the state to avoid vandalizing pipelines and other federal government installations within and outside their communities, as the command was prepared to arrest and prosecute anybody found culpable. The Federal Safety Commission in Otagon State has confirmed the death of 5 persons and 12 others sustained injuries in 2 separate accidents at the toll gate Songwater on Wednesday. The unit's commander of the FRSC in the area, Leye Adegboyega, confirms that the first accident occurred at about 12:10 a.m., while the second one happened at about 6:40 a.m. Adegboyega attributed the 2 crashes that occurred on the same spot to carelessness on the part of the drivers of the trucks involved in the accident. He said the brake of a Lafarge trailer that was heading to Lagos from Abeokuta failed and rammed into 8 vehicles, which resulted in the death of 5 persons, while 4 others sustained various degrees of injuries in the first accident. All efforts by the FRSC officials to get the registration number of the Lafarge truck proved abortive because the truck fell into a ditch. Now for stories in business. The Standard Organization of Nigeria, SON, has said it foresees a significant drop in the rejection of the country's non-oil exports to the European Union any moment from now. This optimism is hinged on the ongoing training of 70 staff of the agency over the next 8 months by the EU on requirement from exporting of local honey, cocoa, millet, rice, and gum Arabic to the EU market. The EU is the main destination for agricultural goods from Nigeria, but most of these commodities are rejected because of non-conformity to EU standards. Now, speaking during a meeting to herald the commencement of the training, SON Director General Joseph Odumodu disclosed that the project is being facilitated by lead exports Geoffrey Visa from South Africa. And a Nigerian, Yinka Jayola, adding that 60 to 70 staff of the agency have been selected to undergo the training, and in turn, they will train experts in the key sectors. Now, statistics from the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics have shown Nigeria's gross domestic product grew by 2.84% in the third quarter of 2015. This is contained in the country's GDP report for the third quarter of 2015, released by the Bureau on Wednesday in Abuja. The figure was higher by 0.49% point from growth recorded in the preceding quarter, yet lower by 3.38% point from growth recorded in the corresponding quarter of 2014. The report says the real GDP increased by 9.19% quarter on quarter, and also during the quarter, aggregate GDP stood about 24,313,636 million in nominal terms at basic prices. Compared to the third quarter of 2014 value, nominal GDP was 6.02% higher. According to the report, the Nigerian economy can be more clearly understood according to the oil and non-oil sector classifications. Now, some oil marketing and trading companies have accused the Petroleum Products Pricing Regulatory Agencies of operating a regime of secrecy in the quarterly allocations given to marketers. To import petrol, it appealed to President Muhammadu Buhari to probe the agency over allegation of corruption in the fourth quarter of 2015. The marketers noted that since Buhari assumed office, he has instituted a series of reforms to enthrone a regime of transparency in the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, but has allowed the BPPRA to rot in the old regime of secrecy and corruption. The chief executive officers of some of the companies alleged that the PPPRA issued import allocations to marketing companies that did not import products in the third quarter and other previous quarters, while prominent companies that performed satisfactorily in the third quarter were denied allocation in the fourth quarter by the agency. Now, outside Nigeria, Paris prosecutor Francis Molins said 2 suspects linked to attacks in Paris have died after police raided an apartment in a northern suburb of the French capital. Molins ordered that a female suspect killed herself by detonating a vest rigged with explosives at start of the operation in St. Denis earlier this morning, while the second suspect was shot by the police. However, French media says the target of the operation was Belgian national Abdelmed Abeld, a key suspect of the attacks, in which at least 129 people were killed. Another suspect, Salah Absalam, was also said to be a target in the raids, and while the identity of the casualties was not released. Bangladesh highest court has cleared the way for the government to execute 2 senior opposition politicians convicted of crimes against humanity during the country's independence war in 1971. The Supreme Court dismissed clemency petition filed by Salahuddin Quadir Chowdhury and Ali Hassan Mohammed Muhajir, who had requested the court to overturn its earlier decisions upholding the death penalty originally imposed by the International Crimes Tribunal. The tribunal, established in 2010, has so far convicted 24 people of crimes against humanity and genocide during the 9-month war, which resulted in the death of hundreds of thousands of people. Most of those convicted by the tribunal are domestic court or leaders of the Jamaat-e-Islami, an Islamist party which in 1971 had supported the goals of the Pakistan military. Reports also revealed that the Jamaat, which was declared illegal in 2013, has called for protest against the court verdict. Now in sport. The Nigerian Football Federation will on Sunday at the final of the 2015 Federation Cup Finals honor more of those who had contributed to making the Federation Cup the most glamorous football tournament in the country. The yearly honor is part of the attempt to restore glory to a tournament that used to draw the biggest crowds as this tournament of shocks and intrigues unfold. The 2015 edition is not left out in terms of shocks as Oka United and Lobby Stars, 2 teams that finished in the bottom half of the Nigeria Premier League table, will battle it out in the final. The 2015 Federation's Cup honorary list include former Shooting Stars striker Rashidi Yakini, Babautu Mohammed of Mighty Jets. The NFF and the Lagos State Sports Commission have also announced that gates will be free and the sum of 200,000 naira will be won via a raffle draw. Now, fans coming to the arena have been told to expect a well-monitored situation with efficient crowd control, alert security officers, friendly protocol officers, and well-marshaled parking, all in the bid to make the Federation Cup experience worthwhile for all present. But that's the wrap on CoreTV News at 4 minutes. Thanks for watching. I'm Olajumoke Olatiju.